We all enlisted, we all gave the United States a blank check of up to our lives.
For too many service members, that check is cashing years after they leave the battlefield.
You think that you're doing the right thing, and unknowingly you may not be.
Ider Van DaCosta of Bethel served as a Marine in both Iraq and Afghanistan. He was only 21 years old at the time, and his first mission was one that will never leave his mind or his lungs.
One of the first things we did was we built out a huge trench. We called it a burn pit, and that was primarily to dispose of any waste, any materials, any things that could be used against us. Drench it in fuel and light it on fire.
Now back home in Connecticut, DaCosta's been diagnosed with asthma, but it may not be the only price he pays for being near the pits. Other service members now have cancer. In some cases, it's terminal.
But in the long term, obviously, you have these effects from exposure over several months of carcinogens and toxics.
Toxins that killed many veterans, men and women who died for their country in their own homes with not enough help from the Department of Veterans Affairs for years until now.
Peter was just an amazing human being. I looked up to him as a friend. As a parent.
Peter Antiojo of Berlin served in Afghanistan for most of 2012. 6 years later, he was diagnosed with terminal brain cancer, glioblastoma. His son Mark was just 2 years old at the time. Peter fought for 2.5 years, but ultimately lost his life in a different battle back home alongside his wife Amy.
One of his wishes to me was, please keep fighting, please keep telling our story.
A story Peter hoped would be heard by the VA, looking for confirmation that his cancer was caused by his time near the burn pits. For years, he was left without benefits, tasked with proving the link himself. And he wasn't alone. For more than a decade, the VA rejected nearly 80% of disability claims related to burn pit exposure. Finally, it's catching the attention of elected officials.
It affects probably 3.5 million or more veterans, many thousands in Connecticut, who were exposed to these toxic substances.
Senator Blumenthal joining the fight with Amy, getting the PACT Act passed. It's a new law expanding VA health care benefits for service members exposed to toxic substances. On the list, 20 additional conditions, some caused by burn pit exposure.
We hope to learn from, unfortunately, those failures. Whether it's at the state or federal level, the failure to recognize illnesses and ailments resulting from military service.
Thomas Sadi with the VA says this law is a massive step forward for veterans.
The claims are already funneling in now to the Veterans Benefits Administration. There's funding to add more employees to do these reviews.
No longer making veterans fight for their country and fight to save their lives alone.
It's a huge weight lifted off my shoulders because now I don't have to go back and say, try to find proof.
And it makes me feel like his death was not in vain.
For Amy, the fight isn't over. She'll continue advocating for the veterans with conditions still not on the list. A list that didn't exist when Peter needed it most.
I think he would say there's still more work to be done. I think that's exactly what he'd say, but I think he'd be really proud of me and our son. I just want him to know that Daddy was a hero.
While burn pits are no longer being used, they haven't been formally banned. Senator Blumenthal is still working in Washington to make that happen. As for the PACT Act, veterans with one of the now covered conditions can apply for their benefits. And anyone previously denied can, of course, apply again. I'll put the information to do so on our website, fox61.com. In Hartford, Lindsay Kane, Fox 61 News.